Pelosi will be holding news conferences. Those will be available later on C-SPAN. We will be ready if the Supreme Court decides at 10 a.m. to makes its decision on health care. We will be on the air. We will take your calls and keep that up to date. The House is now in session.
House will come to order. The chair lays before the House a communication from the Speaker.
The Speaker's Rooms, Washington, D.C., June 21, 2012. I hereby appoint the Honorable Ted Poe to act as Speaker pro tempore on this day. Signed, John A. Boehner, Speaker of the House of Representatives.
The prayer will be offered by the chaplain, Father Conroy.
Let us pray. Almighty God of the universe, we give you thanks for giving us another day. We pray for the gift of wisdom to all with great responsibility in this House for the leadership of our nation. May all the members have the vision of our nation, where respect and understanding are the marks of civility, and honor and integrity are the marks of one's character. Give them the grace to see the best in those with whom they find disagreement, and the courage to move together with them towards solutions that best serve our great nation. Raise up, O God, women and men from every nation who will lead toward the paths of peace and whose good judgment will heal the hurt between all peoples. Bless us this day and every day, and may all that is done within these hallowed halls be for your greater honor and glory. Amen.
The Chair has examined the journal of the last day's proceedings and announces to the House the approval thereof. Pursuant to Clause 1 of Rule 1, the journal stands approved. The Pledge of Allegiance will be led by the gentlewoman from Connecticut, Ms. DeLauro.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The Chair will entertain up to 5 requests for 1-minute speeches on each side of the aisle. For what purpose does the gentleman from New Jersey rise? Gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Chair, soon we will know if the Supreme Court will defend the Constitution and strike down Obamacare or let it stand. You know, the founders worried about the growth of government and the yielding of liberty. Ben Franklin warned of the fragility of limited government when he proclaimed at the convention that they had produced a republic, if we can keep it. And now it's 225 years later in the moment of truth. We will soon know if our republic will reaffirm the commitment to the Constitution or succumb to the consolidation of unchecked power and the erosion of our cherished liberties. Although I hope that Obamacare will be struck down, the founders ultimately left the defense of the Constitution to the people. And I know if the Supreme Court will not rise to the defense of the Constitution, the people will. So to all the patriots throughout the country who have dedicated themselves to the repeal of this law, let me remind you of the words of Thomas Jefferson, who once said, "The grounds of liberty is to be gained by inches." So I stand here today and I pledge, I'll stand aside all of you who are alongside in that fight, inch by inch, to defend the Constitution and repeal the Obamacare law in its entirety. With that, I yield back.
The gentleman's time has expired. For what purpose does the gentlewoman from Connecticut rise?
Speak for 1 minute, revising.
Gentlewoman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you. 1 year ago yesterday, the Supreme Court voted 5-4 in the case of Walmart versus Dukes to make it harder for workers to challenge discrimination in the workplace. Upending decades of judicial practice and precedent, the Court erected new, unwarranted, and challenging barriers for groups of private employees to challenge unemployment discrimination. As a result, 1.5 million female Walmart employees were denied remedy for discrimination that resulted in smaller paychecks, limited professional advancement, and increased financial pressures for families trying to make ends meet. In fact, all workers throughout the country will find it more difficult to challenge any discrimination in the workplace because of the Court's decision. Yesterday, I introduced the Equal Employment Opportunity Restoration Act, a thoughtful, careful and effective legislative response to this flawed Supreme Court decision. It restores the rights of groups of plaintiffs to pursue actions against employment discrimination. We need to see discrimination in the workplace addressed. We have to protect employees' right to bring suit together. I urge my colleagues to support this legislation, help restore the legal rights of ordinary citizens over corporations.
Gentlewoman's time has expired. What purpose does the gentleman from Tennessee rise?
I ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute.
The gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Next week, the Supreme Court is expected to rule on the constitutionality of President Obama's health care law. While we don't yet know the outcome, there are things that we do know. We know, no matter what happens, that you'll still be able to see your doctor. The emergency room will still treat you if you're in an accident or have a problem, and the pharmacy down the street will fill your prescription. We know that the American people don't want government bureaucrats making their health care decisions, but they do want us to address the real problems like skyrocketing costs of care or the challenges that many people are having of finding a physician. And we all know this law must be repealed. In its place, we must adopt reforms that will lower the cost of care, increase access, and enhance the quality. This must be done in a transparent, bipartisan way. No matter what the court determines, our work here has just begun, and as representatives of the American people, we have a responsibility to fix health care in the right way. And I yield back my time.
What purpose does the gentleman from Oklahoma seek recognition?
Unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute, revise and extend my remarks.
The gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, I come from an energy state that's done hydraulic fracking since the 1940s. State that has beautiful, beautiful land, clean air, and clean water. But energy requires a tremendous amount of capital, and so it needs consistency in its laws and its regulations. And in this day and age, that's a problem, apparently, because federal regulations continue to change. It shouldn't be an issue. We are a nation of laws, not a nation of leaders. And as a nation of laws, we center around what is consistent and stable so business can invest. But when that's destabilized, no one knows what to do, no one knows how to invest, and jobs don't grow. Let me just give you a few examples. The recess appointments done by this president just a few months ago destabilizes things in the NLRB and CFPB. The Boeing rule that was put down just 2 years ago now by the NLRB, telling Boeing where they can and can't build. The immigration laws that are coming down right now, it begins to destabilize again, so no one knows when the law is going to be enforced and when it's not going to be enforced and who gets a waiver and who doesn't. The Defense of Marriage Act that now is not going to be enforced anymore by this administration. The HHS decision that comes down and tells a religious group what they can practice as their doctrine and what they can't practice. And then yesterday, a requirement for executive privilege based on Fast and Furious. The Missouri Senate has experienced this. Hosanna Tabor versus EEOC was a 9-0 Supreme Court ruling, kicking out the Obama administration, trying to redefine what is a minister. It is time for stable regulations, stable rules, and the law to come around to Congress again. With that, I yield back.
The gentleman's time has expired. For what purpose does the gentleman from Texas seek recognition?
Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute to revise and extend my remarks.
And without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, the government continues to hide the evidence from Fast and Furious and that gun-running scheme. The Attorney General says he doesn't know who authorized this reckless and deadly operation, but he still conceals documents to show what occurred. The President claims he was not involved, but minutes before Congress began the process to hold the Attorney General in contempt of the President, the leader of the most transparent administration in history, he desperately asserted executive privilege to withhold the documents from Congress. According to the Washington Times, when the President was a senator, he said this about the previous administration: "There has been a tendency on the part of the administration to try to hide behind executive privilege every time there is something a little shaky taking place. I think the administration would best be served by coming clean on this. There doesn't seem to be any national security involved." Mr. Speaker, that was then, and this is now, and this President conveniently does exactly what he criticized others for doing. So the saga of the Republic continues, and that's just the way it is.
The gentleman's time has expired. For what purpose does the gentleman from Missouri seek recognition? Without objection, the gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Unless we act now, the highway and transit programs will expire in a few days, endangering our roads, bridges, transit systems, and everyone who uses them will experience a decline in what they view as America. And so I would like to list quickly the reasons we need to move quickly to pass a highway bill that is not simply an extension. One, we must raise American standing in the world of infrastructure from 24th place to 1. 3 months ago, the Senate passed a reasonable bipartisan 2-year transportation bill that would save or create 2 million jobs. We have a 2.2 million construction and manufacturing workers out of work. $1,060 is how much we could save each family in transportation costs if we could come to an agreement. H.R. 7 was called by my friend Secretary LaHood the most partisan transportation bill that he'd ever seen, the worst transportation bill. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have some more points. I'll try to get them in later.
The gentleman yields back the balance of his time. For what purpose does the gentleman from Colorado seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that all members may have 5 legislative days in which to revise and extend their remarks and include extraneous material on H.R. 4480.
Without objection, so ordered. And pursuant to House Resolution 691 and Rule 18, the Chair declares the House is in the Committee of the Whole on the State of the Union for further consideration of H.R. 4480. Will the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Poe, will kindly take the chair.
The House is in the Committee of the Whole House on the State of the Union for further consideration of H.R. 4480, which the clerk will report by title.
A bill to provide for the development of a plan to increase oil and gas exploration, development, and production under oil and gas leases of federal lands under the jurisdiction of the Secretary of Agriculture, the Secretary of Energy, the Secretary of the Interior, and the Secretary of Defense in response to a drawdown of petroleum reserves from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve.
When the Committee of the Whole House rose on Wednesday, June 20th, 2012, a request for a recorded vote on Amendment Number 17, printed in House Report 112-540 by the gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Rigell, had been postponed. It is now in order to consider Amendment Number 18, printed in House Report 112-540. For what purpose does the gentleman from New Jersey seek recognition?
Mr. Chairman, I have an amendment at the desk.
The clerk will designate the amendment.
Amendment Number 18, printed in House Report Number 112-540, offered by Mr. Holt of New Jersey.
Pursuant to House Resolution 691, the gentleman from New Jersey, Mr. Holt, and a member opposed, each will control 5 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentleman from New Jersey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Much of this bill deals with new giveaways to big oil. The issue that I'm raising right now is to deal with a continuing, long-standing giveaway. The big 5 oil companies made a record profit of $137 billion last year. And in the first quarter of this year, they continue to capitalize on the pain that Americans are feeling at the pump, raking in $368 million in profits per day. Oil companies are not paying any royalties to the American people on oil produced in the Gulf of Mexico from leases issued between 1996 and 2000. Zero, no royalties. They're pumping this oil for free without paying the taxpayers a single dime. Now, they got this giveaway because of an incentive back in 1995 to companies to drill for oil when oil was selling for less than $20 a barrel. In recent years, the amount of free oil these companies have been pumping has gone through the roof, as more of these faulty leases have gone into production. In fact, right now, more than 25% of all oil produced offshore on federal lands is produced royalty-free, no payments to the taxpayers for the use of their land. These oil companies are getting a complete windfall on 25% of all the oil they produce offshore in the United States. They do not pay the American people 1 penny for this right, regardless of the fact that now oil is selling at about $80 a barrel. The #1 entitlement program that should be on the chopping block for Congress shouldn't be Medicare, shouldn't be Social Security, shouldn't be health care for children. It should be the free drilling entitlement that oil companies are enjoying on public lands. According to the Interior Department, American taxpayers stand to lose about $9.5 billion over the next 10 years from this giveaway alone. This giveaway to big oil. The Government Accountability Office projects that all of this free drilling will cost us as much as $53 billion over the life of these leases. My amendment would recover those revenues because they belong to the American people. These oil giants already receive $4 billion a year in tax subsidies. They don't need an additional billion or more per year in free drilling. The amendment would offer oil companies a choice. They can choose to either to continue to produce royalty-free oil in the Gulf, but not be able to receive new leases, or they can agree to pay their fair share and be able to bid on new leases under this bill. And this amendment would not force companies to give up their leases. It would just simply impose a condition on future leases. The Congressional Research Service has agreed repeatedly that this amendment would not be an abrogation of contracts, would not constitute a takings, as some of my colleagues have suggested it might. As CRS has stated, as a general matter, the United States has broad discretion in setting the qualifications of those with whom it contracts. These oil companies are the most profitable companies in the history of the world, yet they receive, as I said, and it's worth repeating, $4 billion a year in taxpayer subsidies. They don't need to be drilling for free on public lands as well. Now, if my colleagues on the other side of the aisle are serious about paying down the deficit and realistically financing the necessary investments that in the people of this nation, then there is no excuse for not supporting this amendment to recover roughly $1 billion a year that is rightfully owed to the American people. It's time to end this taxpayer ripoff, this giveaway to big oil. I reserve the balance of my time.
What purpose does the gentleman from Colorado rise?
Mr. Chairman, I rise to claim time in opposition to this amendment.
The gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Well, I respect the relationship that I have with my friend and colleague from New Jersey. I appreciate the fact that Mr. Holt is the ranking member of the Subcommittee on Energy and Minerals and Natural Resources. I appreciate the fact that he came to Denver recently for a field hearing that the subcommittee had on hydraulic fracking. So I do appreciate the work he does on the subcommittee, but I have to disagree with him on this amendment, and I would urge its opposition to this amendment. It's identical to one that failed on this House floor by a bipartisan vote earlier this year in February. And I have to remind my friend and colleague that this issue has been repeatedly settled in the nation's courts of law, with the courts determining that rewriting the terms of these leases to include price thresholds, which the Clinton administration apparently forgot to include in the leases, would be a direct violation of contract law. Specifically, the U.S. Supreme Court found that the Department of the Interior did not have the authority to rewrite these contracts that were issued during the Clinton administration under the 1995 law. And I will also remind the gentleman that the Department of the Interior has lost this issue in the District Court, Appellate Court, and the Supreme Court. If this amendment passed, the issue would most certainly be challenged once again in court, where the Department would use taxpayer dollars to lose again. Ultimately, this amendment seeks to force U.S. companies to break a contract negotiated under then-current government law, or else be denied the opportunity to do business in the United States. The amendment aims to back companies into a corner and attempts to force them to break a legally binding contract. Again, this amendment has failed on the House floor before, and I would urge continued opposition and a no vote. Mr. Chairman, I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman from Colorado reserves. The gentleman from New Jersey is recognized. The gentleman from New Jersey has 30 seconds.
I thank the chair. Let me move to the other podium. Mr. Chair, this amendment breaks no contracts. We are here because the Congress, well over a decade ago, when prices were less than $20 a barrel, decided this giveaway made sense. If it made sense then, it certainly does not make sense now. Oil companies drill 1/4 of all offshore oil for free. If the other side is serious about addressing the deficit, this is revenue that should be received. Please support this amendment.
The gentleman's time has expired. The gentleman from Colorado.
Mr. Chairman, I would urge opposition once again to this amendment as we have done before in the House, and I would urge a no vote. Thank you, and I yield the balance of my time.
The gentleman yields back balance of his time. The question is on the amendment offered by the gentleman from New Jersey. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. In the opinion of the chair, the noes have it. The gentleman from New Jersey.
I ask the chair for a recorded vote.
Pursuant to Clause 6 of Rule 18, further proceedings on the amendment offered by the gentleman from New Jersey will be postponed. What purpose does the gentleman from Virginia seek recognition?
Mr. Chairman, I have an amendment at the desk.
Do you need anything else?
No.
All right. The clerk will designate the amendment.
Amendment number 19, printed in House Report number 112-540, offered by Mr. Wittman of Virginia.
Pursuant to House Resolution 691, the gentleman from New Jersey, Mr. Wittman, and a member opposed will each control 5 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Virginia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I yield myself such time as I may consume.
The gentleman's recognized.
Mr. Chairman, today the House is taking an independent and important step forward to develop domestic sources of energy, create American jobs, and reduce our reliance on foreign sources of energy. And I'm a strong proponent of an all-of-the-above energy policy. As a scientist by trade, I understand the need to achieve a balance to foster development of American energy while at the same time protecting the integrity of our environment. We can achieve efficiency and protection, and this bill helps us achieve both goals. Offshore wind energy is an important component furthering development of clean, renewable American energy sources. Unfortunately, the process is often unnecessarily slowed for years by bureaucratic hurdles in the permitting process and numerous other delays. The Cape Wind project in Massachusetts only recently received federal permitting approval, a process 10 years in the making. The U.S. built the Hoover Dam in 5 years during the height of the Depression. Within a decade of President Kennedy's call to put a man on the moon, the U.S. had won the space race. Americans have proven that we can accomplish great engineering and technical feats in small periods of time. However, today it's frustrating that this administration cannot point to one wind turbine operating offshore in federal waters. They can, however, point to layer after layer after layer of regulations, bureaucracy, and red tape. While it is critical that energy development is safe and environmentally friendly, the process must become more efficient. This amendment facilitates the development of an all-of-the-above energy strategy by streamlining the process for the Bureau of Energy Management and to develop offshore wind power. My amendment will speed the production of wind energy as it sets a 30-day timeline for the Secretary of the Interior to act on permits for all weather testing and monitoring projects in the United States Outer Continental Shelf. This amendment will also streamline the environmental review process for these small wind testing towers. This amendment also requires coordination with the Department of Defense and other affected agencies so the projects do not disrupt national security or other critical projects. This provision is especially important for the Commonwealth of Virginia with its active defense community. This amendment is identical to H.R. 2173, legislation I authored that passed out of the House Natural Resources Committee last July. This effort has been endorsed by the U.S. Chamber of Commerce and the National Ocean Industries Association. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman from Virginia reserves his time. What purpose does the gentleman from Massachusetts seek recognition?
Mr. Chairman, I claim the time in opposition to this amendment.
The gentleman from Massachusetts recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, the amendment creates a brand new burdensome permitting scheme that would complicate the process for obtaining a permit to construct a meteorological tower offshore and undermine offshore wind development. Let me say that again. This will actually make it harder to build an offshore wind project, not easier. This amendment is similar to H.R. 2173, which was reported out of the Natural Resources Committee last year. When moving this bill through committee, the Republican majority was unable to find a single wind industry witness to come to testify on this bill. And that is because the industry that the majority is trying to help with this bill doesn't think that the measure is helpful. So the wind industry does not support this bill. Just make that clear if you are interested in helping an industry to grow. The bill has not been endorsed by any offshore wind companies or trade groups, and those kinds of companies have popped up all over the country now, and none of those companies are endorsing this bill. I'm going to read a statement that is part of the legislative hearing record on this amendment. It is from Jim Leonard, the president of the Offshore Wind Development Coalition. Here's what he says on behalf of the coalition. Streamlining approvals of towers or buoys to test wind speeds offshore is an important goal. We believe that NEPA will allow this goal to be achieved. So NEPA clearly is not the enemy here. But in case there is still doubt, he says this regarding the bill's NEPA exclusion. We believe, this is, again, Mr. Leonard speaking for the Offshore Wind Development Coalition, we believe that current practices are adequate for the approval of these towers or buoys. This bill represents a fundamental misunderstanding of what the offshore wind industry really needs. A company is simply not going to invest millions of dollars engineering and constructing a huge meteorological tower on the outer continental shelf unless they have a guarantee that they'll be able to use that area to build a wind farm. To be very clear, the industry wants a lease before they invest millions of dollars into a project. To get a lease, we should and we do require consideration of the impacts of development on the environment and the competing uses of these public waters. We should and we do require coordination with the other agencies using the outer continental shelf like the Navy, the FAA, and the FCC. This amendment would dismantle that process. This amendment says, sorry, wind industry, you may have sunk millions of dollars into your meteorological tower, but it's time to tear it down. We let you build it without fully considering the impacts, and no wind farm either. Plain and simple, this bill certainly reduces the likelihood that we will see wind constructed off the shores of our country. The companies affected by this bill were not consulted before creating it. I have a document here from the Navy commenting on this bill. Essentially, it says the 30-day limit on consultations in the amendment is problematic. The Federal Aviation Administration has expressed similar concerns. The Federal Communications Commission has expressed similar concerns. This bill will make it harder to construct offshore wind projects, and maybe, and I think this is what it's all about, that's the point after all. Let me at this point reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman from Massachusetts reserves his time. The gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Wittman, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to yield 1 minute to the subcommittee chairman on energy and mineral resources, Mr. Lamborn from Colorado.
The gentleman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to point out to my colleague, Representative Markey, that this administration has not yet seen the completion of a single wind tower off the shore of the United States in over 3 years. Not a single one. This is a sincere and genuine attempt to cut through some of the red tape that's causing this kind of delay. How in the world can you have less red tape being bad for the construction of wind towers? This is truly a good solution. I applaud this legislation. Representative Wittman has offered a bill that embodies the same concept that passed the committee by a bipartisan vote earlier this year. This is a good bill, a good amendment from that bill, and I would urge its adoption. I yield back to the sponsor of the amendment the balance of my time.
The gentleman from Virginia has 1 minute.
Mr. Chairman, I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman reserves. The gentleman from Massachusetts, Mr. Markey.
Thank you, Mr.
You have 45 seconds, Mr. Markey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The bottom line is that President Bush's Interior Department sat on offshore wind regulations for 4 years. You hear that again? President Bush's Department of Interior sat on offshore regulations for 4 years, did not promulgate them. President Obama got them done in his first 6 months. So the Obama administration passionately believes in new wind, and in fact, 35,000 new megawatts onshore, and they desperately want it offshore as well. And the process is working. We agreed that during the Bush years, the Cape Wind process did not work, but there were no rules that were promulgated. Obama did it. The project's now approved for Cape Wind, and it should move forward. There's nothing wrong with the process. I urge a no vote on this amendment.
The gentleman's time has expired. The gentleman from Virginia is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to remind folks that this bill does accommodate concerns that may be raised by the Department of Defense, by other federal agencies, to make sure that all those thoughts and ideas are put into place in considering this permitting process, but it streamlines it. Now, that's a simple, thoughtful process that gets to the point much quicker, that instead of taking 3 years to permit a data gathering tower, now it goes to 30 days. It seems to me counterintuitive to say that longer is better. In this case, since there are no active mills, windmills offshore, wind turbines offshore, it seems like to me we ought to quicken the process. This clearly does that. It allows for proper due diligence, proper consideration of all the different concerns, and this amendment indeed facilitates the development of an all-of-the-above energy strategy by streamlining that process there with the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management to develop offshore wind power and also to support good-paying American jobs. Let's not forget about that. And I urge my colleagues to accept this amendment and expedite offshore wind energy development. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back the balance of my time.
The question is on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Virginia. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it.
On that, Mr. Chairman, could I request a recorded vote?
Pursuant to Clause 6 of Rule 18, further proceedings on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Virginia will be postponed. Who are we waiting on? It is now in order to consider Amendment number 20, printed in House Report 112-540. For what purpose does the gentleman from Georgia rise?
To address the amendment at the desk.
The clerk will designate the amendment.
Amendment number 20, printed in House Report number 112-540, offered by Mr. Westmoreland of Georgia.
Pursuant to House Resolution 691, the gentleman from Georgia, Mr. Westmoreland, and a member opposed will each control 5 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Georgia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I rise today in support of the bipartisan amendment to H.R. 4480 with my colleague from Iowa, Mr. Braley. Like this legislation, the amendment that we offer today would ease expensive and burdensome energy regulations and help save American jobs. By placing service over-the-counter refrigerator units, which is a fancy way of saying refrigerated display cases like you see in grocery stores and delis, in their own product classification, we can remove a burdensome regulation that could put this entire industry out of business. Currently, these deli display cases are in the same classification as commercial reach-in refrigerators, similar to those that you have in your home. This means that they must also meet the energy efficiency standards of those refrigerators. But this doesn't make any sense. These two types of refrigerators are designed for completely different purposes. Your refrigerator at home is only open so many times. It has a light that comes on only when you open the door. These display cases are well lit. There's a lot of glass, which makes it harder to keep the energy efficiency at the same level as a reach-in refrigerator. And, you know, if you don't want to reach in and grab your popsicle and just come up with a stick, we need to put this in a totally different classification. In my district, it's going to mean the cost of about 1,100 jobs. Across the United States, it's about 8,500 jobs that would be lost if these people are put out of business. And as this bill does, and as this amendment does, we think it helps save jobs. So with that, I'll reserve.
The gentleman from Georgia reserves his time. What purpose does the gentleman from Massachusetts seek recognition?
I rise in opposition to the Westmoreland Amendment.
The gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you. I mean, let's just get to the heart of the question of energy efficiency. Back in 1987, I was the author of the Appliance Efficiency Act of 1987, which is the constitution for energy efficiency in the appliance field. And since that time, the efficiency of appliances has increased so dramatically that we have reduced the need for between 100 and 150 new coal-fired plants from ever having to be constructed in the United States. And why is that? Well, electricity that is not consumed results in less need for new coal-fired or any kind of fired electricity, saving the consumers, saving the environment, and just working smarter, not harder. If you can keep the popsicle cool with a more efficient refrigeration process, if you can have the toast pop up with a more efficient toasting process, if you can have every one of the appliances that we use, including the air conditioning in this room, the air conditioning in this room is just as good as it was in 1987, but it is 50% more efficient in its generating capacity than it was in 1987. That reduces the need to generate new electricity. That is needed. That saves money, and it saves on environmental damage as well. So right now, we're about to consider something that deals with deli-style refrigerators. Now, we're having this conversation having had no hearings on this issue in the Energy and Commerce Committee. We've had no testimony from the industry, no testimony from the Department of Energy on what this amendment could mean in terms of its impact. And we have had no evidence of an incapacity to be able to comply with these rules, except for the fact that
no one ever wants to necessarily become more efficient if they have to go through the extra effort, and they've never been required to do so. But the reason that we have these energy efficiency rules is that we're doing it for the betterment of the whole country and moving industries along, making sure that we do not have to produce this additional new electricity. So I think that it's better if we save money and save energy at the same time. That's what efficiency is all about. That's what working smarter, not harder, is all about. The evidence is clear since 1987 that we've done it, and we've moved every other device along and made it more efficient. So I just don't know the reason why we would need a provision like this, and at this point I would like to reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman from Massachusetts reserves his time. The gentleman from Georgia is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And you know, sometimes up here we have people that think they know more than the industry. And this industry has jobs, it employs people, and they're trying to do the best they can with their technology. But we can't be up here and tell industry what's best for them if we don't know anything about refrigeration or the energy efficiencies that they're trying to do. These folks are trying to do the right thing. They are trying to do it to the best of their ability, but with these regulations, they're unable to do it right now. And all we're asking for is to save 8,500 jobs across this country, and with unemployment in Georgia above the national average, it's 1,100 jobs just in Georgia. So I hope that my colleagues on both sides of the aisle will support this amendment, and let's save 8,500 jobs, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back his time. Gentleman from Massachusetts.
I thank you. I yield myself again as much time as I may consume. You know, this is just a continuation of the Republican obsession and opposition, obstinate, obdurate opposition to increased efficiency in our society. You know, just a couple of weeks ago, they brought a bill out here on the floor that would roll back the efficiency of light bulbs in the United States, even though the entire industry has already complied with it. They were still trying to roll back the efficiency of light bulbs. And this is just, you know, now we have the deli freezer, and we'll move on to product by product that they don't believe it is necessary to improve its efficiency whatsoever. And they just respond one by one almost to a incomprehensible set of demands made by, as yet, non-existent experts telling us that it's impossible to comply. So why don't we have a hearing? Why don't we get the evidence? Why don't we hear what every company in the United States says about deli freezers, and then we can act upon it after we hear the evidence. But acting this way, you know, congressional expert is an oxymoron. We're not experts compared to real experts. We're only experts compared to other congressmen. You know, congressional experts an oxymoron like jumbo shrimp or Salt Lake City nightlife. I mean, there is no such thing as a congressional expert. We should not be acting this way on the House floor, trying to make ad hoc changes in efficiency rules. It just doesn't make any sense. Again, I oppose the way in which this is occurring, and I urge a no vote on the Westmoreland Amendment.
Gentleman yields back his time. The question is on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Georgia, Mr. Westmoreland. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. The amendment is agreed to. It is now in order to consider amendment number 21, printed in House Report 112-540. For what purpose does the gentlewoman from California seek recognition?
I have an amendment at the desk, number 21.
The clerk will designate the amendment.
Amendment number 21, printed in House Report number 112-540, offered by Ms. Bass of California.
Pursuant to House Resolution 691, the gentlewoman from California, Ms. Bass, and a member opposed will each control 5 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentlewoman from California.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My Los Angeles district is home to one of the largest urban oil fields in the United States, the Inglewood oil field. My constituents suffer from anxiety and stress because of the oil drilling. In 2006, drilling operations were ramped up and the release of harmful fumes forced nearby residents to evacuate their homes. In April 2012, the County of Los Angeles conducted a study in which over 70% of residents living near the oil fields expressed concerns about exposure to emissions from the oil field. Meanwhile, my colleagues, unfortunately, on the other side of the aisle, continue to push for more domestic drilling and relaxed regulations. The bill before us today is based on two claims that appear to have become articles of faith. The claims are that gas prices will fall if we weaken environmental protections and if we open more areas for drilling in the United States. The problem is that there is no empirical evidence supporting these claims. Oil prices are set on a world market, and no amount of domestic drilling in the United States will have a meaningful impact on that price. This isn't spin from some interest groups. This is the conclusion drawn by experts. It has been corroborated by the Associated Press and the Congressional Budget Office. The AP conducted a thorough study of gasoline prices and U.S. oil production over the last 36 years and found zero correlation between the two. In other words, changes in U.S. oil production had absolutely no effect on gasoline prices. But that doesn't mean there's nothing that we can do to help American families burdened by high fuel costs. CBO recently released a study on energy security. They found that boosting U.S. oil production will not protect Americans from gasoline price spikes. Instead, CBO found that the only way to protect consumers from these spikes is to use less oil. The reason for this is simple. Gasoline prices are linked to the global oil market. That's why Japan, which imports all of its oil it uses, and Canada, which exports more than 75% of the oil it produces, experience the very same gasoline spikes we experience. The best way to save money at the pump is to drive right past it. The Obama administration has been helping consumers do just that. We know that efficiency works to reduce costs. The Energy Information Administration has found that the cost per mile of driving has fallen by more than 25% since 1980 due to improvements in the efficiency of our vehicles. President Obama has already taken action to reduce costs further. The new vehicle efficiency and greenhouse gas standards for model years 2012 through 16 will save consumers, on average, over $3,000 over the life of a vehicle, which is hundreds of dollars per year. The millions of Americans that have bought model year 2012 cars are already enjoying savings at the pump. In fact, the new standards are currently saving consumers 14 cents per gallon. Furthermore, the energy efficiency sector is a booming job-creating field. In my district, Coda Automotive, an electric car company, recently opened their new headquarters. In a few short months last year, they created 300 new jobs, and hundreds more will be created in the coming years. This is the type of job creation and cost savings that we should be focused on. My amendment simply improves the bill by adding a provision that actually has something to do with gasoline prices. This amendment would require the newly created Interagency Committee to analyze how to protect American consumers from gasoline price spikes by reducing America's dependence on oil. I hope my colleagues will join me in recognizing that efficiency works and must be part of the solution. If not, this legislation will continue to ignore the only approach identified by CBO as helpful in protecting consumers from supply disruption and price spikes. I urge my colleagues to support this amendment.
What purpose does the gentleman from Colorado seek recognition?
Mr. Chairman, I seek time in opposition to the amendment.
The gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I have great respect for the gentlelady from California who joined this Congress in the class of 2010 election and served as Speaker of the House in California. It's great to work with you on the House floor, but unfortunately I am going to have to oppose the amendment. You know, the best way to reduce our dependence on foreign oil is to increase our energy opportunities right here in our own backyard. And that's what the Domestic Energy and Jobs Act is all about. The components and pieces, the 7 parts of this bill, are designed to reduce red tape, to increase opportunity for American energy production, those productions occurring on our federal lands, including renewable energy. The opportunity to create wind energy, solar energy on our federal lands, making sure the Department of Interior is planning for that, taking a look at it. But again, the best way The best way to reduce our reliance on oil imports is domestic production. The opportunity to increase that production right here in our own backyard, and that's what this bill is about. It's about creating jobs and opportunity for the American people. It's about making sure that we can reduce the price at the pump. And let me talk just a little bit about reducing the price at the pump. The gentlelady from California mentioned the issue of CAFE standards, increasing efficiency in cars. Well, you know, you're only going to achieve those higher efficiencies through CAFE standards if you're able to afford a new car. But we know that that is going to make cars more expensive. It's going to cost $1,000 in the near term. It's going to add $3,000 by 2025 to the cost of a vehicle. That's going to be higher if you talk to the National Association of Auto Dealers, the NADA. So if you're not struggling under the burden of higher gas prices, then I guess you can afford a new car. Maybe you can, I don't know. But the fact is, if we continue to allow energy increases to increase nearly 100%, as they have over the past 3 years, the American people, our constituents, will be priced out of the ability to even contemplate the purchase of a new vehicle, continuing their struggle to make ends meet, to heat, to cool their home, because of the cost of energy prices. We know that we have opportunities right here in our own backyard. The Keystone XL pipeline, North American energy, energy from the Bakken oil fields of North Dakota. The cause of gasoline price fluctuation is already known. The gentlelady from California mentioned the CBO study. The CBO study talks about demand as a factor in price, but seems to neglect that there is no supply connection. Supply matters. Supply and demand matters. Let's take a look at natural gas. We have a production of natural gas right now. The price is at low levels because we are almost a glut of natural gas. As a result, the price of natural gas is low. Supply matters. Secretary Chu testified before the Energy and Commerce Committee that supply matters. It's not just a demand equation. You can't just turn around and say, as more people consume oil, that increases the price of oil without taking a look at the other part of the equation, supply. More supply. Secretary Chu said so. With that, Mr. Chairman, the best way to reduce our reliance on foreign imports is to create American jobs with American energy. And I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman from Colorado reserves his time. Gentlewoman from California is recognized.
Yield back my time. Thank you.
Gentlewoman yields back her time. Gentleman from Colorado.
Urge opposition to the amendment and yield back my time.
The question is on the amendment offered by the gentlewoman from California. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. In the opinion of the chair, gentlewoman from California.
Ask for a recorded vote.
Pursuant to Clause 6 of Rule 18, further proceedings on the amendment offered by the gentlewoman from California will be postponed. The chair understands that amendment number 22 will not be offered. It is now in order to consider amendment number 23, printed in House Report 112-540. For what purpose does the gentlewoman from California seek recognition?
Mr. Chairman, I have an amendment at the desk. It is number 23.
Clerk will designate the amendment.
Amendment number 23, printed in House Report number 112-540, offered by Mrs. Capps of California.
Pursuant to House Resolution 691, the gentlewoman from California, Ms. Capps, and a member opposed will each control 5 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentlewoman from California.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield myself such time as I may consume. Mr. Chairman, it is my hope that we can all simply agree to this amendment. Among this bill's many provisions is one that creates a new interagency committee to do the impossible. It is charged with conducting an analysis of the EPA air quality rules that have not been proposed using data that does not even exist. I'm concerned that this new interagency committee is being set up to fail. First, the bill before us requires the new committee to examine the potential impact of several EPA air quality rules on gasoline prices. There's one significant problem. These rules have not yet been proposed. Now, we can argue about whether they have been initiated, contemplated, discussed, mulled over, considered, and so forth. But the fundamental fact is that the rules and their requirements have not even yet been proposed. The committee simply has nothing concrete to analyze. As a result, any report that this new interagency committee would complete would be the product of a series of best guesses, estimates, approximations, and assumptions that cannot possibly provide credible assessment of a potential impact of these potential rules on gasoline prices. Moreover, it may not even be possible for the interagency committee to complete this analysis, as insufficient as it will be, without a significant investment of resources at the Department of Energy. We asked the Energy Information Administration what it would take to complete such an analysis. EIA, which is better positioned than any other government agency to tackle this project, said that it currently does not have the analytic capability even to conduct the state or regional level breakdowns required by such a bill. The agency also would have to collect or purchase new data, despite the bill's hollow assurances that this isn't necessary. And the Department of Energy would have to devote significant new staff and contractor time to be able to comply with the bill's requirements. In essence, this bill proposes to devote scarce taxpayer dollars to produce a report that will not be reliable, credible, or even valuable to anyone. My amendment simply states that if the Energy Department determines that this analysis is not feasible to conduct, requires data that does not exist, or generates results that would not be reliable or useful, then the Interagency Committee does not have to complete the report. If it determines that such an analysis is infeasible, the 6-month delay of EPA rules then would not go into effect. This amendment is a good governance amendment that ensures effective use of taxpayer dollars. It's common sense. I urge my colleagues to vote yes on this amendment, and I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentlelady reserves. For what purpose does the gentleman from Colorado rise?
Mr. Chairman, I rise in opposition to the amendment.
The gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I've enjoyed serving on committee with the gentlelady from California, but I must oppose the amendment. Talking about the process that we're going through on regulations, this is the very heart of the bill. To understand the cost, the feasibility, what pressures regulations can put on the price of energy, the price of gasoline, and whether or not these regulations are going to cause price increases. In fact, we know very well that they are going to cause price increases, because we've had testimony from the Environmental Protection Agency admitting that some of these regulations, proposed regulations that they have on the books or that they have promulgated or contemplating, will increase the price of gasoline and other prices in other energy areas. These have real effects on consumers. In fact, if you just increase the price of gasoline by a penny a gallon, it'll increase the daily cost to the American consumers, businesses, millions and millions of dollars each and every day. 1 penny a gallon, costing our economy millions and millions of dollars a day. And so with this, we're trying to actually say, let's take a look at it to understand. We're not stopping them from going forward with their plans or developing rules. Certainly, we want to encourage the protection of our environment and make sure they're doing their job to protect our environment. But we also need to have our eyes open and make sure that we have a chance to look before we leap when it comes to these regulations. Delving down into the EPA's own process, though, if you look at what happens under the regulatory process, cumulative impact analyses are feasible and already required by President Clinton's executive order 12866 and the President Obama's executive order 13563 as recently as March of this year. Just a couple of months ago, the White House issued a memo reiterating that, and I quote, "Agencies should take active steps to take account of the cumulative effects of new and existing rules." The EPA's own action development process, the internal process of the EPA, requires that the analysis start early in rule development. Early in rule development. That doesn't say you wait until the rule is developed. It doesn't say you wait until it's all done, complete, out there. Early in the rule development process. Action development process, taking a look at it. This information's available. They've got the data. They've got the studies. It's time that they use that information to understand the impact that it will have on our constituents back home who are finding it increasingly difficult to balance the cost of energy with costs like paying for their home mortgage, putting food on the table. And that's why we have an opportunity with this bill to create American energy security and to create jobs in this country. And with that, would reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves. The gentlelady from California.
Mr. Chairman, I have no further speakers, so I'm prepared to close.
Gentleman is recognized.
Mr. Chairman, this is a straightforward amendment. As we know, the bill, and as my colleague from Colorado has just illustrated, the bill creates redundant layers of bureaucracy and requires a study of key air pollution standards that are not even yet proposed by the EPA, clearly designed to postpone the pollution cleanup. This amendment is a straightforward amendment which simply says that if the Energy Department's analysis of EPA's air quality rules is not feasible or not useful, we should not be spending taxpayer resources on it. And I would note again, these EPA air quality rules that would be analyzed aren't even on the books yet. We shouldn't be wasting agency time and resources on tasks like the ones proposed here. So this amendment is common sense, straightforward, very simple. So I hope my colleagues will support this amendment, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentlelady yields back. The gentleman from Colorado.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And again, analyzing rules, that's part of their job. That's part of the EPA's job. It's part of the DOE's job. DOE has a budget in excess of